That's right. Lesson 6. We're ready to go. This one's about converting from fractions to decimals to percents, round and round. So first, let's get an overview of what we're looking at. That kind of helps you keep from being overwhelmed when there's a topic that's got a lot of different components to it. We've got 3 different kind of numbers that we're going to start with: decimals, fractions, and percents. And we're going to try to change each one to one of the other 2. So what we're looking at here is 6 different processes, going from decimal to fraction, decimal to percent, fraction to decimal, fraction to percent, percent to decimal, percent to fraction. Okay, 6 different ones. Some of these are going to overlap, as you'll see when we go along. There's a worksheet that goes along with this. Here you go. All your rules are up here at the top, so you don't have to worry about copying those down. And if you are working independently from home, I'm going to put a link down in the description where you can download the worksheet. Okay, so let's get started. First, we're going to go from decimal to fraction. Okay, let's just get a decimal. Let's say you have 0.7 and you want to change it to a fraction. The rule for changing decimal to fraction is you just put the number over a multiple of 10. That means 1 with some zeros. So here's your number. Now, how many zeros you put depends on how many places you have a number after the decimal. In this decimal, we've got 1 number to the right of the decimal, so we're going to need 1 0. So fraction form would be 7/10. Now let's look at 0.73. You're still going to put just the number over a multiple of 10. Since I have 2 numbers behind the decimal, I'm going to have 2 zeros in my denominator. Okay? All right. What if we had a number like 2.73? You're still going to put all of the numbers on the top. Now, how many zeros do I need? Well, I count past the decimal place, 1, 2. Still going to be over 100. Okay? And you could change this to a mixed number, be 2 and 73 over 100. Okay? Now, let's look at a couple more tricky situations that you get into. What if I have something that looks like this and I'm asked to change it to a fraction? Put the number on the top, just the significant digit, all right? So I'm going to put this over a multiple of 10, and I need as many zeros as I have digits to the right of the decimal. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 7/1000. Okay? All right, one more example. If I have a problem that looks like this. Now in this end 0 is not significant. Okay, so I can just get rid of it at this point if I want to. Then I'm going to put just the number over 2 places here, 2 zeros there. Okay, so that's situation number 1, going from a decimal to a fraction. Okay, situation number 2 is going from a decimal to a percent. The rule for this is you move your decimal 2 places to the right, and that turns it into a percent. So let's just look at some examples. If I have 0.53, I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the right. So now I have 53%. Okay? That's all there is to that. Now what if you don't have 2 numbers? What if I just have 0.5? You still move your decimal 2 places to the right. 1, 2. What do you do with this open space? Well, you fill it in with a 0. Okay? So that would be 50%. Now what if you have too many numbers? If I have 0.273, I'm going to still move it 2 places only, and my percent would be 27.3%. Okay, now let's look at one more. What if I have 1.79? I'm still moving my decimal over 2 places, so I have 179%. Okay, if you have more than one, then when you get to the decimal point, you're going to have more than 100%, because 1 is 100%. Okay, if you just have the number 1 and need to change it to a percent, that's 100. So anything larger than 1.79 is larger than 1, is going to be larger than 100%. Okay, situation number 3, going from fraction to decimal. The rule on this is you just divide the numerator by the denominator. So let's get a problem. Here's a fraction, 3/5, and I want to change it to a decimal. You're going to put numerator divided by denominator. Okay? Now, 5 won't go into 3, so what do? I'm going to add a decimal. And I may not need both zeros, but I just usually start off putting the 2 zeros anyway. I can always drop one later. Now we're doing long division with decimals, just like we learned in one of the previous lessons. Put your decimal up here. It doesn't matter if you carry it down under here as you're dividing, but it does matter that it stays right here. Now 5 won't go into 3, so I'm going to move over to here. 5 will go into 30 6 times. Now remember, put your number up above this one. Don't put this 6 over here. That's where you'll mess up. Okay? So 6 times 5 is 30. I wind up with no remainder, so I didn't even need that other 0. So 3/5 changed to a decimal is 0.6. Okay? All right, let's look at one more example. What if I had an improper fraction? 5/3. Okay? You're still going to put numerator under the box, denominator outside, and then you're still going to divide as usual. Now, I'm still going to go ahead and put a couple of zeros here because I'm probably going to need them. All right, 3 will go into 5 one time. 1 times 3 is 3. Don't forget to put that decimal up there. Subtract, bring down. Okay, I'm just doing long division. 3 will go into 20 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18. Subtract and bring down, and I get 20 again. So what's fixing to happen here is I've got a repeating decimal going on. It's just going to keep going, 20, 20, 20, 20. Okay, so you can stop. This would round up into 1.67. Okay, so that would be your final answer. That is 5/3 changed to a decimal. Okay, next situation, fraction to percent. The way you do this is you divide first, just like we did in the previous example, and then you move your decimal over. So this is just combining 2 techniques that we've already gone over just in this lesson. So let's take one of those problems we just worked, 3/5. We determined that decimal form of 3/5 was 0.6. We did long division and we came up with this answer just a minute ago. Now to go from decimal to percent, I'm moving my decimal over 2 places, so I have 60%. Okay, so you're not doing anything new in this concept. You're just combining 2 concepts that we've already learned. Okay, I'll go ahead and do the other one that we looked at previously. When you do 5/3 into a decimal, we rounded it off. Showed you that it was going to be repeating, so we rounded it up to 1.67. Now, how do you change from decimal to percent? Move that decimal over 2 places. So 1, 2. So I get 167% final answer. Okay? Good job. Okay, we've got 2 more concepts to look at. The 5th situation is going from percent to decimal. The rule for this is move your decimal to the left 2 places, okay? This is the opposite of going from decimal to percent. So let's grab some problems. 23% to decimal. Where is your decimal now? I don't see one. Well, there is one. Anytime you don't see a decimal, it actually resides right there. It's understood to be there. So if you need it, that's where you put it. Now, go 2 places to the left, and decimal form of that is 0.23. This is probably one of the most useful concepts in this whole lesson 6, because if you have a percent given to you in a problem, you're going to have to change it to a decimal. A percent cannot interact with regular numbers. You have to change it to a decimal first. Like when you have those problems, what's 23% of some other number? Before you can do that, you have to change it to a decimal. Okay, so this is a building block for that. Let's look at some unusual things, so to speak. All right, what about this one? To change it from a percent to a decimal, where are you going? 2 to the left. Well, here it is, but I don't have 2 numbers. Just like in the other one, you insert zeros where you need to. So decimal form of 2% would be 0.02. Okay? 20%. Here's your decimal. 2 to the left. So you got 0.2. 200%. Here's your decimal. You go 2 to the left. So decimal form of it would be 2. You don't put 2.0. That's unnecessary. So sometimes the decimal form of percent doesn't have a decimal in it. Okay? Last but not least, we're going to change a percent to a fraction. If you need to change a percent to a fraction, your rule is put your number over 100. I don't care what the number looks like. You put it over 100. If you're given a percent, that is something out of 100, so you put it over 100. For example, if I have 2% and I want to change it to a fraction, I'm going to put 2 over 100, and then I'm going to reduce down if possible. So that would reduce to 1 over 50. If I have 20% and I want to change it to a fraction, I'm going to put 20 over 100. This would reduce down to 1/5. If I have 200% and I want to change it to a fraction, I still put 200 over 100 and reduce it down. Now, reduced form of that is just going to be a 2. It's a whole number. Even though you're changing to a fraction, sometimes a whole number is a fraction. It could be understood to be over 1, but you're not going to write that if you just have 2. Okay? So no matter what you have, just put it over 100. All right. And that's an example of every situation that we could have. That's all 6 of them. So on your worksheet, there's going to be a chart, and you fill in the things that are missing. So you have to decide, you have to do that analysis again. What do I need to do? You have to think that part out yourself. Now, there is some rounding that's involved in these, and I wanted to touch on that real quick. I've seen a lot of students get problems wrong because they didn't know what was meant by the round it to the hundredths or round it to the tenths, whatever. When you have some numbers, let's do 1, 2, 3.45. Okay, this is your hundreds. This is your tens. And there's your ones. Now, here's your decimal point. Then you start going backwards, only you don't have a once. You start with tenths. Notice the difference between tens and tenths. This has a TH at the end, and this does not. And this number right here would be hundredths. And then you would go on thousandths, whatever. So if you're told to round to the nearest tenth, you're going to need one place after your decimal. If you round to the nearest hundredth, you're going to need two places after your decimal. Now when you round, if the next number is 5 or more, you round up. If it's 4 or less, you round down. So 125.35 would round into 125.4. 125.34 would just round into 125.3. 5 is your up place. If it's 5 or more, you round up. Okay? All right. So give a try to that worksheet. Check your answers. Concentrate on these hard. There's really not a whole lot of problems on the worksheet. So this is the time when you need to be sure that you get every single one of them correct. All right? Okay, give that a shot. And lesson 7 is coming soon. Thanks. Bye.